On the broadcast tonight, the nation's chief blasting the opposition leader who referred to his administration as lost.
Hear more on the liberalization of the telecommunications sector.
Up in the Bahamas tonight, Minister of State for Legal Affairs Damian Gomez breaks down just how the government plans to tax web shop.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
The country's leader lashing out at the opposition leader following what he calls irresponsible comments. Good evening and happy Earth Day, Bahamas. I'm Altaviz Munnings.
And I'm Andrew Knowles. Thanks for joining us. Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Perry Christie, slamming comments made recently by F&M leader Dr. Hubert Minnis, who likened the Christie administration to the lost Malaysian Airlines flight MH370.
Well, the flight, as we all know, which was heading from Malaysia to Beijing, China, vanished last month over the South Indian Ocean with more than 200 passengers and crew on board. Well, while speaking at the ceremony in Mayaguana yesterday to welcome the return of Bahamas Air and the refurbishment and expansion of the runway, Mr. Christie minced no words when he responded to his parliamentary opponent. We get the story tonight from Clint Watson.
It's a very silly thing to do.
Prime Minister Perry Christie meant no words when he said opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis should be condemned for what he called ill-spoken words, likening the Christie administration to the lost Malaysian airline.
You can joke about politics, you can even seriously argue about your side of politics, but when you use as an analogy or an illustration in politics the loss of human life that has gripped the attention of the world, you are not speaking properly, you're not speaking wisely, you're not speaking humanely, and I have to tell you that this is a matter that will cause concern, because people would be absolutely shocked and surprised that that is what you would do.
Mr. Christie, who was in Mayaguana celebrating with residents the return of Bahamas Air and the opening of the newly refurbished and expanded runway, says what's worse is that we in the Bahamas are all too familiar with these kinds of disasters, particularly as an island nation.
Where we've lost lives in the water, we've lost lives by air. It's not a joking matter. And when you hear people commend the air, remember what happened here on this trip in Mayaguana. You don't joke for things like that.
Prime Minister Christie says persons in public life must be more responsible for what they say.
We must exercise the greatest care with our words when we are in public life. I just wanted to say that about that, because this is not just a matter for the Bahamas, it's a matter for the world, where the attention of the world has been gripped, and people all over the world have been searching for an aircraft. People have lost their lives.
ZNS News made contact with Dr. Minnis, who promised to comment on the matter at a later time. However, up to news time, there's been no response. Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
The government is making progress in its quest to liberalize the telecommunications sector. This after the monopoly held by BTC for mobile service ended earlier this month. Yesterday, Prime Minister Christie said that another company will be coming to the Bahamas to compete with BTC. He also revealed the name of the person heading the committee appointed by the government to oversee the process.
I put a timeline on the process. I'll be talking more about it later on this matter, but the fact of the matter is that it is now in progress, and it's a committee that the government has agreed, headed by Mrs. Ruth Miller, the former financial secretary, and with different persons who will be making up that committee from the public and private sectors.
Despite an announcement earlier this year that the government was looking to regulate web shops by July 1st, a cabinet minister doesn't believe that time frame is realistic. But State Minister for Legal Affairs, the Honourable Damian Gomez, dismissed reports that the issue has caused discord among the cabinet, adding that legislators are working around the clock to ensure that a comprehensive draft is presented. We get the story tonight from Janaea Noel Ferguson.
The government is presently reviewing the tax rates for web shops once gaming regulations come on stream. Minister of State for Legal Affairs Damian Gomez admits a number of variables must be considered.
I would think that what one would do is look at the rate that is charged internationally and look at the requirements that are imposed on them internationally with respect to, for instance, the provision of facilities to combat problem gaming and problem gamers, and having viewed that in the round to then come up with a figure.
Gomez acknowledged recent consultation with various web shop operators and the government, but their input, he believes, won't be the determining factor when the legislation is presented.
The issue of drafting is different. As the government's lawyer, we in the Attorney General's office have a responsibility to the public, not merely to repeat or replicate what others who have an interest want in the legislation, but to consider whether this is in fact in the public interest to have in the legislation and to draft appropriate provisions. And that's what we're carefully doing.
Some suggest web shops be taxed as much as 10%, but State Minister Gomez says it would be premature to determine their taxes. He, however, anticipates that web shop operators will welcome any probe by government to determine their earnings.
You come from a completely unregulated position which is criminalized. People are describing you as criminals. You are seeking a public waiver of that. You don't expect to get that unless the public knows exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it. So if they don't expect it, well, tough. That's just how it is.
Now, although July 1st was the announced date for the legalization of web shops, Gomez says he doubts that will be enough time to have that legislation underway. Janae Noel Ferguson, ZNES Network News.
Still ahead for us tonight, the jury could soon have its say in the Douglas Pratt murder trial.
And hear how the lime shortage is affecting a business that depends on the juicy citrus fruit. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
Shell Quality Fuel.